Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into another episode of the From the 50 Midweek Review. I am your host, Zach Zook, alongside Nick Tolley, and we are presented to you by Book It Sports and Aces Wild. Download the Book It Sports app from the App Store today, and you can visit Aces Wild at 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois. Book It Sports got a lot of exciting things going on. We just had the Masters for gambling. Now we're getting into kind of that tough season for gambling, I think, Nick. It's a lot of baseball and a lot of weird things happen. It's tough to make money gambling in the summer, but you should still go download the Book It Sports app nonetheless. The guys over there have a ton of content that they keep pushing out to keep it interesting and fresh over there. And it's a good time. So you can track your bets, bet on your favorite baseball team. I saw that you got to be consistent with the baseball bets, Nick. I saw one that was like, if you bet the Cubs over runs for the whole season in 2016, like you got like shit rich. So you just got to pick like a team like that, like that you're a believer in, and stick to it every night, because with 162 games, you know, if you're going one-offs, you're going to be disappointed. But it's also for us degenerates, it's a nice opportunity to get a large sample size to see if your foolproof method actually works.
For sure. You also have hockey playoffs coming up here pretty soon.
You do have hockey playoffs coming up. You're going to have NBA.
Up.
So yeah, you got some stuff. I guess I'd be more probably inclined to bet on the playoffs than baseball. But I don't really watch the NBA, and the Detroit Red Wings are the worst team in the NHL. So
no,
I've been
my
checked
Buffalo
out.
Sabres are much worse. They've been ranked 31st in those power rankings for multiple weeks now.
Well, all I know is that Detroit needs the first or the second pick. They keep getting screwed over in the draft lottery. And if it doesn't turn around this year, I don't know, man. Like, I just might have to write a letter to the league office. So regardless, download the Book It Sports app. Go on, head over to Aces Wild, 208 North Main Street, Columbia, Illinois. They got dartboards. They got ice cold brewskis. It's a good time to go relax and hang out. You can also, as Nick pops the graphic for our visual audience, you can call or text us at 904-990-FT50. That's 3850 to those of you that don't catch the meaning from the 50. So again, that's 904-990-FT50. And Tyler, we got a couple of things to get into today. Probably a little bit shorter podcast. We are going into basically full-on draft talk for the next couple of weeks here as we get kicked off. But there is one story that I wanted to talk about before we get into kind of our draft talk, and that is Julian Edelman has announced his retirement. But I saw a week or two ago he had a knee injury, and it was, it leaked out that it was going to potentially bug him throughout this fall, and it was something that was chronic and wasn't going away. And then I saw just, out of nowhere, he had announced his retirement through a video post on Instagram, which, like, if anybody knows Julian Edelman's personality at all, and Nick, I'm sure you do, being Patriots / Bills guy, that's the perfect way for Jules to go out, because I listened to an interview with Julian Edelman one time where he said that what he listens to in the locker room to get hyped up before games is he'll watch like highlight videos on YouTube, like hype videos on YouTube. like the type of shit that like teenagers create, and that, just the hardos of the hardos like go and watch. Like, Jules loves watching those. So he's like a big hype video guy. He would have like a different one for every game. And if you followed him on social media the last couple of years, he was big into his own personal hype post that he would post on Sunday mornings or over the weekend before their games. And so perfect that his announcement of his retirement was on IG. But Nick, as somebody that watched him throughout his career more closely than I did, for sure, what are your kind of takeaways about Julian Edelman, who's, I think, would it be a stretch to say he's the best 7th round pick probably ever?
I don't think that's a stretch at all. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation if he's going to be a Hall of Famer or not. He's a Super Bowl MVP.
We're getting to that, yeah. Nick. No, I mean, just let it ride for now. I was going to ask you that in 5 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, anytime a 7th rounder wins a Super Bowl MVP, I think that means that you probably made a good pick there, especially if they win it from the wide receiver position. But I mean, he worked his ass off to become a good slot receiver. He had really no offers coming out of high school. He goes to Kent State, plays quarterback, has nothing going into the draft. I don't even think he went to the combine. And the Patriots pick him and go, we're going to make you a slot receiver. And he let them coach him on everything. He grinded and turned into being a great slot wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, truly one of the more unguardable slot guys of my generation. Very reminiscent of Wes Welker, obviously, partly because he played for the same team.
Julian
But just
Edelman was just able to play through a lot more injuries and kind of grind through some things.
Well, and he was an ultimate badass because he did always play through injury, and he was just a classic Belichick player, just a classic Belichick guy. Like when they take like Braxton Berrios and they take all these other really weirdos. Who's the guy that they had returning punts last year? Gunnar something.
Oh yeah, Gunnar Olwinski or something like that. However you pronounce his last name.
He was like the top of what Bill hopes for with those type guys. He was a kick returner, has the Patriots franchise record for I think a punt or kick returns. I think he had 4 runbacks. So Julian Edelman was just an exceptional player. I was shocked when I looked at his total stats. He only had like 6,000 something total receiving yards in the regular season. Now, I think he had like 1,400 though over the course of his playoff runs. He was one of the more dominant players in January and February that I think we've ever seen in the history of the league. Like Peyton Manning struggled to get it done, and there's like across other sports you have Mr. October, Reggie Jackson, and you have these guys known for getting it done in clutch time. I mean, Julian Edelman was as reliable as it got, and he just torched people in the playoffs and was such a constant. I think that's why it's such a shock that you look up, it's like he only had 6,000 career receiving yards.
But he also only really played like 6 seasons because he lost a year, I think, he lost a year to a torn ACL. When he first came in, he was learning the position, was behind Wes Welker for like 3 years or something. So he really only had about a 6-year career. So 6,000 yards in 6 years that's really good.
So I didn't know that. I didn't look up like his football reference page. I didn't know he like sat. So was he basically a special teamer his first, like throughout his rookie contract?
His first few years. Yep.
Yeah, so that kind of explains it because to me it's like I felt like he was a pretty consistent 1,000 yards a year guy, but then when you look up 10-year career, he's only got 6K. That's I think kind of shocking, but that makes a lot more sense now that you've explained it. So now we'll get to the question, Nick. Do you think he belongs in the Hall of Fame?
I think he does, and I've heard people explain this. It's the Hall of Fame, especially for the NFL, is more like a museum. It's a museum of the history of the NFL. It's much different kind of than the Baseball Hall of Fame is. And I mean, I don't know if the Patriots, I know obviously he was the MVP for one, so they wouldn't have won that one Super Bowl without him. But I think they lose 2 or 3 of those other ones, like the one against Seattle, without him.
How about the one against the Falcons? Like all the insane catches he made for in those games. He was, yeah, I mean, he's one of the first guys you think about when you think about, I mean, the Patriots. You got the guys in the first run like Teddy Bruschi and Rodney Harrison and the players of that defense, Ty Law. But then with the second group, you think of obviously Tom, Gronk, and then it's Julian Edelman. I mean, he was a force. I just don't think, I get what you're saying. Now, do I think he makes the Hall of Fame? That's another question and conversation altogether. I think he will have a chance, and there will be some long conversations about it. Ultimately, though, I think the Hall of Fame has gotten too mainstream and has let too many people in. I think it should be reserved for, the truly elite players to have their names enshrined and to get gold jackets. And I think while it's unbelievable what he was able to accomplish in his career, objectively looking at it, I think you'd have a huge problem on your hands. He did only have 6,000 career receiving yards, and regardless of the postseason accolades and what he did in January and all the the good teams he played on, would we think of him the same if he had those same numbers with the Jags? You know, I don't think we would. So I think he's definitely benefited from playing on a team coached by Bill Belichick and under Josh McDaniels, who's gotten him the ball. But I'd ultimately probably put him in the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. But I think that there's an argument to be made the other way, and I'm not going to like throw a fit if they put him in. I mean, he's one of my favorite players to watch over the course of the last 5 to 10 years because he's just, I don't know, man. He's like people like him. I think the toughness, especially at the wide receiver position, I think that that's starting to disappear from the league as we get farther and farther away from, you know, people being able to hit receivers with the ball in the air, hit you going over the middle. You can't really touch the receivers these days. And so I think as a result, you get some receivers that are a little softer that are able to do more things that would have gotten their shit rocked maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But Julian Edelman was like a tough guy, like Anquan Bolden type. He would take hits. He never refused to, he refused to go down. He was a fun player. So I'll definitely miss him. I don't know what the Patriots do going from here. I mean, the hits just keep on coming for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I don't know if they try to trade up and get a guy like Devontae Smith or what they're going to do, but I also wouldn't be shocked. Julian Edelman technically is a free agent if he decides to unretire. Maybe he reunites back with Tom down in Tampa Bay.
So Nick and I were joking about this yesterday, and it's so true. I mean, I thought about it the second he announced his retirement. Like, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds he stays retired? I got to put the odds at like at least 40% that the second Mike Evans rips his hammy, Julian Edelman's going to be unretired and signed with the Bucs. You know, Julian Edelman this last fall was like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah. Like week 6 or something, all of a sudden, oh, Julian Edelman's no longer retired.
Well, it's like, so here's a verbal meme for you, Tyler. You know the Squidward meme with SpongeBob and Patrick running outside having fun? It's Tom Brady is SpongeBob and Gronk is Patrick, which actually is a little too on the nose. But Squidward is Julian Edelman, trapped in Foxborough, watching Tom Brady and Gronk soak up the Tampa Bay sun, winning rings, and not actually wanting to retire. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But let's move on to the draft, and this will take up the rest of the show. I wanted to take a look at I've put together a lot of my board for this year. I haven't been able to have as much time to study this year as last year, because last year not only were we in a global pandemic at this time, so I had a lot of time inside and a lot of time to look at guys, but I was also being trained on analysis for Pro Football Focus. So like I was watching 8 to 10 hours of raw film per weekend. So which I did not do this year, but I still did watch every single one of the guys. And I don't watch everybody. It's not a total comprehensive list, but people who I look at the list and then I go back and watch all the guys. So I got, I think, about 130 prospects, about 10, 15 deep at each position. And so this is the second year I've done this, but I figured it would be fun to maybe go take a look back at how I had it ranked a year ago, to look at some of these prospects that were big names last year that we talked about right here on this very podcast, and how their careers have shaped up a year later, and see how I did. So I'm going to pull this up real quick, and we can just go right down the top. I know who I had rated as the top quarterback, and one of I think the big misses I had in the draft last year, Tali, was at the quarterback position. I had Tua Tagovailoa rated as the best quarterback over Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So I wanted to take some time and talk about that one and see what your reactions are to that. I actually still think, I was watching some Bama tape from 2019. Had to, oh, that's great. Throw it up. Yeah, throw it up there. Yeah. So I've been going back and watching a lot of like 2019 Alabama stuff, Tali, because so many guys opted out this year in 20 that I had to go back and find 19 footage to watch some of them. So it's like you go back to 19 and when Tua was healthy, and you're like it makes you realize like, yeah, this guy's like really, really good. Like maybe we should just like chill out a little bit. The Dolphins were not very good last year. They didn't have good protection. He was coming off a hip injury. The way Brian Flores inserted him when the team was competing for the playoffs was super weird, and then he would pull him. By the way, if you're wondering what the highlights are, those are guys that did not go in the first round that I had rated as like the top 40 players or whatever. So I had Jeff Okudah, Chase Young, two Ohio State guys rated as the top 2 players last year, which, I mean, hurt my soul to do that as a Michigan guy. But I truly believed Jeff Okudah was a really special player. I don't know, like I didn't hear his name very much. So I think you could definitely knock that. He definitely hasn't been the best player in the draft class. I think the guy I put at number 2 is probably the best player in the draft class so far. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Chase Young was probably number 1.
I mean, he keeps up the tradition too of these Buckeyes edge guys coming out. I mean, Joey Bosa, then Nick Bosa, and now Chase Young a year later. Nick Bosa had an unreal rookie year, rode the Niners, to a Super Bowl appearance. Chase Young's team didn't have the same team success, but that defensive line, and the reason why I'm considering them to potentially become division champs now that they got Fitzmagic, is because of this guy. I mean, Chase Young is everything we thought and hoped Jadeveon Clowney was going to be when he was coming out of school. I mean, they really do remind me of each other. I can't remember. Actually, now I'm going to look at my board and see who I comped him to, if I comped him to anybody. I comped him to Jadeveon Clowney. Yeah, I thought so.
I'll real quick interrupt this. What do you think about the Browns signing him for 1 year, $10 million?
Yeah, kind of a minor story. I don't even think he's worth $10 million. I don't know what your feelings are on it. I would pay him like $2 to $3 million is what I would pay him, because, and it's hard. Like, he's not going to take that. This guy is a top pick. He's used to making big money. He was making big money on his rookie deal. Then he gets another deal, and every place he goes, he gets money. But at a certain point, you go from a prospect or a guy with potential to just, this is what you are. And the fact of the matter is, Jadeveon Clowney is like a pretty average NFL player.
That gets hurt a lot.
That's unreliable, that's a locker room problem, who's a headache off the field, who wants to be paid all this big top money like he's freaking Lawrence Taylor, when in reality, he's a lot closer to like Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
Like he's a good player when he wants to turn it on. He has the physical tools to dominate, but that's, I think, where we talk about the draft and we talk about, evaluations of these players and these guys coming out. What is between your head and what type of guy you are, I think, has a bigger bearing on the success you have in the National Football League more than your physical characteristics. Now, you see, like, Julian Edelman is like an outlier. He was able to get the most out of his physical limitations. He still is a really good athlete, but like, you do have to have the physical care. I'm not saying that that's not important, because it certainly is. I'm just saying, clearly, Jadeveon Clowney, I think, is an example of a guy that was a top prospect. You can't go back at his final year in South Carolina and be like, oh, that's a miss. You evaluated him wrong. No. The scouts didn't evaluate him wrong. It's just that the person was never going to succeed in the NFL because he had lazy tendencies, and he has problematic tendencies. He's not a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson type that is going to grind and put in the work to get better, that truly loves and cares about football and wants to win rings. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know Jadeveon Clowney, but like pretty clearly in it for the money to me, Yeah.
And same thing that happened with Jamarcus Russell.
The money in the clout, Tolly. The clout.
Yeah.
So another guy I had up here rated pretty high. We already touched on Tua. I still believe in Tua. I think the Dolphins nail these next couple drafts. If I had to go over and do it again, I would put Joe Burrow ahead of him. But I wouldn't put Tua too far behind. I think would probably put Tua over Justin Herbert. And actually, I don't know. Justin Herbert was pretty impressive, but
he was good.
You have to equate it to. I think that Chargers team was a lot better than the Dolphins were too. And
Yeah.
they had a lot more going for them. Now, you could counter argument that and say, but Anthony Lynn, and you'd be right. So let's just see. That's all I'm saying. Let's just see on Tua. I was not a huge believer in Justin Herbert, and that's why you don't see him anywhere up here. So that is one guy I missed on big time. I'll tell you somebody I think I hit on. I had Tristan Wirfs at 9th overall. I had him as the best tackle in the draft. Over Mekhi Becton, over Jedrick Wills, over Andrew Thomas, who the Giants took at 4 overall. I feel pretty good about that right about now. He was the starting tackle that protected Tom Brady and led them to a Super Bowl. Him hitting as a rookie was huge to that offense's overall success, because we weren't sure. There was a lot of talk about him kicking inside to guard. There was talk about, his feet aren't very good. It might take him some time to get underneath of himself, but he's just a straight beast, man. And it was pretty easy to see when I flipped on Iowa. And I think it's pretty much been the case for him in the pros. All right. Henry Ruggs at 10's a problem. That's a problem. But although I got to tell you, though, again, Nick, I just think it's more the Raiders than Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs is a guy that had some moments in 2020, but was not a part of a consistent offense. I think he did get banged up a little bit. I think it's fair to question how good of a job Derek Carr did at getting the ball to him. One thing was, as we move on from Ruggs, the running back conversation was a hotly debated thing. I was huge on Jonathan Taylor. I was a big Jonathan Taylor guy. Almost everybody uniformly had DeAndre Swift as the top back, and I had Jonathan Taylor as the top back. Some people had Clyde Edwards-Helaire towards the end, but I was a big Jonathan Taylor guy. And the way he ran it for the Colts the second half of the year, I remember listening to a scout years ago say that you can't really judge rookies in September and October. You just don't throw it out. I mean, they're going to struggle. If they have success, it doesn't really necessarily mean anything. But once it gets to Thanksgiving, that's when the guys who have good NFL careers typically figure it out. They got some experience under their belt. They're up to game speed. They're comfortable with the offense. And that, I felt like, was the case for Jonathan Taylor. The Colts started establishing an identity with him in the backfield with Nyheim Hines. They cut out the Jordan Wilkins bullshit and started actually giving JT 15, 20 carries a game. And I think he's a road grader, dude. He looks every bit the back I hoped he was going to be out of Wisconsin. And I think he was a first round back. I get why the Chiefs did what they did and took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, although I still think that was the wrong pick for them. I think DeAndre Swift would have fit what they were trying to do a little bit. I think DeAndre Swift's just a better version of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, good player. I don't think he's a great player. I mean, he's an example, again, of a guy that had a good September. They used him and featured him early on, and then he kind of faded. They acquired Le'Veon Bell, and he kind of fell out of favor, got some injuries, didn't really play all that much. So that I thought was kind of interesting. As we get down the list here to about the 20s, Kenneth Murray was a favorite of mine that I liked a lot better than everybody else did in the draft. The Chargers took him, and he's gone on to have a pretty good rookie season. That Chargers defense is going to be really, really tough. They lost Derwin James to the season-ending injury really early on, right, Nick?
Yeah, it was very early.
So they get him back, and unfortunately they lose Casey Hayward, so they probably have a need at corner now. But they acquired Chris Harris Jr. in free agency the offseason before, so they do still at least have him. So it'll be interesting to see. I know Kenneth Murray had a solid year. I know he graded out pretty well. But I'm interested to see how he looks this year, because I didn't hear his name a whole lot last season. Not that I watched that many Chargers games. They weren't really a playoff team. And when I was turning them on, I was more interested in watching Justin Herbert play. But
you heard Patrick Queen's name a lot. You just didn't hear Kenneth Murray.
Right. Well, and Patrick Queen actually, You know, it's interesting you say that. I loved Patrick Queen. I wanted the Packers to take him. Had him rated as the 17th best overall player. Had C.J. Henderson actually rated right above him. C.J. Henderson, I believe, was he hurt for the Jags this past year?
I think so.
That's a guy I heard his name when I was listening to a podcast, and I went back and looked. I was like, where did I have him ranked? Because I'd never heard of him last year. It's like he got drafted. It's like, oh, Jags added a pretty good corner. Like, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And he just, I don't know, didn't hear much about him. So,
Yeah.
but Pat Queen did not do much for the Saints. I mean, he played a lot, but I don't think he had a great rookie season. And he was a guy I was all for. Had a 6.8 grade on him, rated him as the 17th best player. I had him even above Kenneth Murray, just because of his sheer speed, like sideline to sideline ability, his ability to cover. But the problem is, like, I think he really got taken advantage of in the run. And as somebody who watched a lot of LSU tape, I did their defense in particular. Queen was not a starter. He only started like 3 or 4 games because they had Devin White. And then after they had Devin White, it was the guy coming out this year, Jabril Cox, who was rated, pretty higher and played a lot more.
Yeah.
So, and they had Michael Divinity Jr. also that year on the team, which I have rated down here as well. So Patrick Queen was a guy that didn't even play a whole lot of college football. So it'll be interesting. He's a guy to me that, like, watch out for him year 2 this fall, as he didn't play a lot of football, learning on the fly. Again, I think it's tough when you walk into a building on a really good team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They don't have the time, man, for you to figure it out. So I liken it to the St. Louis Cardinals, how they treat their prospects. It's like they have a system, and when you are called up, you're expected to perform. And if not, we'll send your ass down. Like, it's your career. Make of it what you will, because we're competing to win the division and for pennants every year. We don't do any of this rebuild bullshit where we're going to give you 600 at-bats to hit 250 and then maybe you'll be good next year. No, none of that. So I respect that, like, philosophy of the winning cultures, but I do think it's hard as a rookie sometimes to get your feet under you.
For sure.
I think a huge miss on my part was Yetur Gross-Matos. He was drafted 38th overall to the Panthers. Going to be an edge guy across Brian Burns, who I loved coming out and who has been really good. But YGM, man, didn't hear anything about him in the fall. So we'll see if he can kind of get it cranked up. They drafted him to kind of be in that 4-3 and rush off the edge, and didn't see or hear very much about him. Jalen Reagor to the Eagles at 21. I had him in my top 30. Liked him as a player. I don't think the Eagles used him very well.
No.
So obviously they had a lot of problems, and Reagor showed some flashes. So we'll see. He's one of those guys, Nick. Do you ever like watch players in college and then you see them in the pros and you're like, that doesn't even look like the same body type of the guy in college? Like, is that just me? Because, like, Reagor was one of those guys. Like, I had no idea Reagor was, like, he looks so much taller, like, in the NFL than he looked at TCU. Like, he kind of looked small at TCU. And with the Eagles, I don't know if it's like equipment or what it is, but he looks like Lanker. I'm like, there's no way that's Jalen Reagor. So, like, that sometimes I think is interesting too. Guys play differently. If they're thinking too much, they might not look like the same guy on tape as they did in college. Let's go to 29. Tolly, can you read that name for me?
KJ Hamler,
wide receiver out of Penn State. I was huge on him. I'm huge on Rondale Moore, who I think is this year's better version of him. Hamler is like 170 pounds and he's 5'9". Had a little bit of the dropsies, but he's an electric playmaker. And I really thought the Broncos were going to feature him a little bit more. Now, I get that they had, some depth. They had Deshaun Hamilton, Tim Patrick, I think, to go with obviously Jerry Jeudy, and then Cortland Sutton. But Cortland Sutton got hurt before the season even started. And KJ Hamler, it still felt like wasn't hardly used. Like, they picked him 46th overall. Clearly, they thought in a similar vein as I do about him. He was a guy I would have loved to see the Packers pick up on day 2. Broncos scooped him up pretty quick, though. And I don't know why they just kind of refused to integrate him into the offense if he struggled or what have you. But he's like a great slot gadget guy that so far I've been really wrong about his success. I thought he's going to be a really, really, really good player. Jordan Love, I have at 35 here. He went to the Packers at 26. I had Cam Akers. I had Jake Fromm at 37. And he was taken with the 167th pick by your Bills, Tolly. And now he's going to be the third stringer. He might not make the team.
I think he'll still he might be like a practice squad guy, but he'll definitely still be there. I was shocked while watching the draft that he fell that far.
You know, I knew he didn't have like the biggest arm. He was kind of a statue. I did though think that he did some good things in college. Like I could envision him having a lot of success in the NFL. I thought that a Patriots type system would have been really good for him. He's a distributor, like he's a game manager.
I thought
so that's
for sure
obviously why he
Patriots
fell. I didn't have him in the first round, you know.
Right.
But and let's see, 6'5" is kind of like the boomer bust grade, which is what I put on Jordan Love. And okay, so Fromm was like the 6'5" too. Because I thought for both those guys, it was all about where they went.
Do you want to explain these grades a little bit as people see it that may have not seen grades like this before?
Yeah, sure. So I picked this up from, and I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing it this way. I don't really like it, to be honest with you. This is my second year doing it, and I thought I need to learn this and do it because that's how they do it in the pros. Right. So like Lance Sirline, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, all of the draft people that have been in front offices grade like this. And basically that 6'5" and up is, to me, is at least as far as I can understand, is like those are like your first rounders. 6'5" is like the classic boomer bust prospect. Anything above that you feel like is a solid year one starter, Pro Bowler. Anything above 7 is like freaking elite. 8 is the perfect prospect. So like if you go up to the top, what did I have Chase Young at? 7'3", 7'2", 7'1". So like those are like crazy high grades. Like anybody with a grade over 7, that's like a really big number. Like you think that they're going to be studs. Like if you have a guy with a 7 or higher, like you think Hall of Fame level, like for sure Pro Bowler, gonna play a decade in the league, like has huge potential. So like for example though, like I think I only had 6-7 players with a grade above 7. But I mean anything above 6'5", I pretty much for the most part regard as a first round. From like 6'5" to like 6'2", 6'1" is like day 2. The even 6 is traits-based developmental player or prospect. So if you have a 6, that's kind of what you are. You're like a project. Not good enough to take you on day 1, but like day 2, maybe like 4th round, like you have some traits that are worth developing. And anything below 6, honestly, it's like backup level, special teams, gadget guys. Those are your 5th, 6th, 7th round undrafted free agents. So the reason I don't like it though is because like I then have gone and like I do my own grades and put them independently based on what I think, but to see like get a concept and a feel for how the numbers are on players that I think or like know that I think alike with this person. The reason I don't like it is because like I go on like the freaking NFL.com and I've seen them, and there's like 9 million players with like a 6'3", and they do it to the 100. So it's like 6'38", 6'34", 6'28". It's like, so to me, I feel like that's like a little. I feel like that's to me like basically saying like I don't want to put myself out there, so I'm going to give all these guys grades about the same thing, and so that way I don't ever look bad, which I think is BS. So I think going forward, and I know that the Philadelphia Eagles do this, they put round grades on people. And so I think going forward, that's what I'm going to do after this year. I'm going to stick with it this year. But I think going forward, I might put round grades on people.
Or you just grade them.
That's a little easier.
Grade them like it's Madden, just 0 to 99.
99. Yeah, then you could do that. So as we go down this list here into like what I would say, I mean, and here's the other thing too, like in these lists, when you look at prospect lists, the top 50 is always like a big deal. Like if you're in the top 50, those are like Devontae Adams, not a first round pick, but he was in the top 50. So having guys in your top 50, you might be 10, 20 picks off because that isn't really all that important. But if you have a guy in the top 50, that means you think that they can be a good pro. So I also use that to like find out who I think got good value. And so some of these guys in the 30s and 40s here, I think embody that. And I think that for the most part, not a whole lot of misses throughout that middle part. Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's had a good career. Antonio Gandy-Golden was involved in the offense. I expect him to have a bigger year with the Washington football team this fall. Denzel Mims is, I think, going to play a big role for the New York Jets this fall. Michael Pittman, once he got integrated into the offense, he did a much better job. You got Cole Kmet, who did a pretty good job. Akeem Davis-Gaither was in the starting lineup for the Bengals all fall. Igbenogany out of Auburn, and Ashton Davis for the Jets. I mean, you never heard of Ashton Davis because the Jets were so bad, but he was a guy that was like a track star and would just play center field. He picked off Justin Herbert a couple times. He's really, really an impressive guy. So as we go down here into the 50s, there were some guys that I think I was a little bit low on that have just been crushing. Kayvon Wallace was a guy I was higher on than basically everybody else. And he went 127th to the Eagles, started in the beginning. I don't know if he got an injury or what. I comped him actually to Malcolm Jenkins, funny enough, before the draft. And he gets taken by the Eagles, and he literally played Malcolm Jenkins' role. It was kind of hilarious. Jeremy Chin, one of my favorite players of last year's draft. He was the last pick in the second round to the Carolina Panthers. And he hit. Like he was ripping for Carolina this fall at a Southern Illinois Carbondale. So like that's a little hits a little close home to me, Tolly being an Illinois guy. But Jeremy Chin is like he's like Derwin James Light. He can do a lot of different things, and he's had a good start to his career. Willie Gay is a player that had a ton of off the field concerns, was taken by the Chiefs. So far, he's done a really nice job. Harrison Bryant basically led the tight ends last year. He had, I think, like 80 or 90% of rookie tight end production in what just ended up being a terrible, terrible class. So now you're getting down to the 60s here. And, Meek Robertson, Brian Edwards, Raiders grabbed both those guys. And scroll down a little bit more, Tolly. You get into like
Higgins and Antoine Winfield. They had pretty good years.
Yeah, no, I'd say one of the biggest hits in the draft last year was Antoine Winfield to the Bucs at 45.
Yeah.
That was a little rich to me. As you can see, I had him rated at 70. So therefore, by the numbers, I would have thought he was like an early third round pick. He went pretty early second round. And I was lower on him than the scouts were. Scouts pretty much had him as a second round pick, late first. I even saw him in some mock drafts, like towards the lead up to the draft. I just didn't buy it. He didn't look all that explosive to me. I thought he was undersized. I thought he was going to have a tough time in coverage. I was like, yeah, man, it's great that he hits people, but like, I need my secondary players to cover. Like, how is he going to cover? And he was awesome this year. Again, like Tristan Wirfs. You look at this Bucs draft. I mean, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., and then you go down a little bit here, Tyler Johnson, who I have as my 75th rated player. They pick him at 161, and he's absolutely better than the 161st player in the draft. Tyler Johnson out of Minnesota was awesome and kind of got lost in the shuffle because of just how many mouths they had to feed in the offense. But he made some unreal catches for them and some big time third down conversions. So the Bucs draft class and the way that Jason Light was able to just hit some homers in that draft, I think is a big reason why they won the Super Bowl this year. That and you got Devin White healthy. He exploded for a couple games in the fall of 2019, but then got hurt. So he was a virtual rookie this past fall. and a Pro Bowler, like right off the bat. So it's like you added him who you didn't have in 19. You add all these rookies that were instant contributors. And so looking at this a year later, I think the Bucs maybe had the best draft out of anybody in the NFL that year.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. And then, like, right under them, you kind of go the other way where the Patriots took Kyle Duggar at 37. He definitely was not the 37th best player.
Well, and so Kyle Duggar was a guy that I liked and a lot of people liked. He was like one of those hidden gems. You're like,
D2
this guy can play. Like, I don't care that he's from Lenore Ryan. I know he's a safety. Like, he is a day 2 player. But as you can see here, I had him as like a third round, mid to late third round pick. And the Patriots basically took him in the first round. I mean, they took him with the 5th pick in the second round, and there's just simply no need for that. I'm seeing a name up at the top here, Tolly, that I feel pretty good about. Isaiah Wilson at 68. I had him as the 68th best player, offensive tackle out of Georgia. He went 29th to the Titans. I actually called this pick in the mock draft. This is one of like 3 or 4 picks that I actually got right. I had Isaiah Wilson to the Titans at 29, and it happened. And he's already been cut from Tennessee. So I feel pretty good about most people had him in their top 50. A lot of people had him in their top 30. Titans clearly thought enough to take him with the first round pick. I had him at 68, so I feel good about that. Another guy I didn't like was T. Higgins. I was not a huge fan of his game. I kept him down at 71st overall. He was one of the first picks in the second round. He was the first pick in the second round. 33rd overall selection in that draft. I just don't. I know he had some flashes, right, Tyler? Like, how did he look as a rookie stats wise?
I'll look up his stats, but I don't think he did much in the first half, but I think it was kind of the second half of the season he started to take over and did pretty decent.
Was he was never like a fantasy viable guy, right?
He was kind of he had 67 catches for 908 yards and 6 touchdowns.
That's actually pretty good for a rookie. And I was going to actually cut him some slack because if you think about it, he's a rookie trying to work his way into a receiving core that had AJ Green and who's the slot guy whose name escapes me right now? Boyd.
Yes, Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd. So he's trying to work his way in to get receptions and some opportunity into the offense. And probably about the time he got comfortable and started working his way in, Joe Burrow gets hurt and lost for the year. So then you got, Brandon Allen throwing to you and
whoever else they decide to suit up.
So I actually think, 60-some catches for 900 yards, that's actually awfully impressive. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself an L on that one, I think.
Fantasy-wise, he was kind of that guy you just keep on your bench and hope that maybe if one of your guys goes down or you get a good matchup week, you can kind of throw him in there.
Yeah. So Bryce Hall right beneath him at 72 was a player I loved. Early on, I had him rated as the best corner. I backed off of it. I still had him rated because he had just such injury concerns. You had to drop him down. I had him as the 10th best corner in the draft. He would have been top 2 or 3 had he not had the injury concerns. But I still I had him in the top 100. I thought he was a day 2 pick. The Jets got him at pick 158, and he popped for him. He's going to be a starter on that team next year unless they get spend some high draft picks on that. And he was a productive player for them. So Bryce Hall out of the University of Virginia. Now it's Virginia Tech that's got the corners this year. Caleb Farley, who coincidentally enough was widely regarded as cornerback number 1 right there with Patrick Surtain. They were 1-2 neck and neck. I wouldn't have killed a team for picking either of them. But then Farley, who had opted out of 2020, just had his second back surgery. So he's now fallen down the boards because of injury, similar to the way Bryce Hall did. So as we go down this list a little bit more, let's go down, Nick. I have after this some guys that I did not have rated in the top 100 that got picked. So I thought it would be interesting because I saw one name earlier today that I didn't even have. He started out on my list, Tolly, and I literally took him off for other wide receivers. I didn't even have room for him. and that's Chase Claypool.
Yeah,
and then the guy you got highlighted, we'll get to him in a second.
Okay.
But Chase Claypool went 49th overall to the Steelers. I literally didn't have him rated in the top 100, and boy, was I wrong. I viewed him as like a guy that could potentially like play like split end, like to like do some tight end stuff. And I think part of it's because he was a tough evaluation for me because of the offense Notre Dame plays in and the way Ian Book plays. I just didn't really see it with him, especially after, and I think he was a victim of Equanimeous St. Brown. I liked Equanimeous St. Brown coming out of that school and ignored the production. He didn't have much production because of the system. He had like 600 receiving yards. So it's like, well, you're going to draft a guy pretty high, like based on 600. He only had 600 receiving yards. Yeah, he looks nice. The underwear Olympics are great, but 600 receiving yards. And we've seen since he's gotten to the Packers, he's had some nice moments, but he hasn't done shit. And so I just couldn't put Chase Claypool over some of these other guys in a really deep wide receiver class. But you hit on it earlier, and we're going to go down further. There's some more Raiders on this list. Damon Arnett at 19 overall was so negligent.
Yeah, that's a bad pick.
And I was lower on Arnett than some other guys. And I don't want to hear the Ohio State bias thing because I had the Ohio State guys ranked 1 and 2. That's not it. I watch a lot of Ohio State football, unfortunately. And he just wasn't it. He wasn't it. You could tell. And he for whatever reason, I don't know what John Gruden fell in love with about his game, because when I watched his college tape, not only was it like not good, I thought it was downright ugly at times. Like he literally can't cover. Just can't cover people when he plays corner. So
that's a problem for a corner.
If you go up there, I saw the Seahawks. There's a lot of guys that I had never heard of before that I didn't really study or have very high grades on. Yeah, Damian Lewis from LSU. No, it was another player. Go up a little higher. Yeah, there you go. 48
Taylor.
Overall, Darrell Taylor, edge player at Tennessee. You ever hear of him?
Nope.
Me neither.
Still haven't.
Yeah. So there are some interesting misses that I had on here. I had these guys rated, but just didn't make my top 100. Antonio Gibson, running back out of Memphis. Like I think he's been a really productive player, and I think he's got a chance to have a really nice career with the Washington football team. Trying to pick some other guys out. Again, like Lynn Bowden Jr. Like Raiders picked him 80th overall. He played quarterback for Kentucky. He's like a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, like gadget hybrid type player. John Gruden, I'm sure, had some wet dream about all the stuff he could do in the offense. And I believe he was cut, didn't make the team, or I don't believe he's with the Raiders anymore. So there again, the Raiders, I think. So we look back. I think the Bucs had the best draft. I think the Raiders maybe had the worst draft.
Yeah, it doesn't look great for them.
So
they're starting to pop up a lot more on this list too.
Tanner Muse, 100th overall, the safety out of Clemson. Not sure if he made the team or not. Definitely didn't start. Raiders at 109th overall. John Simpson, an interior offensive lineman out of Clemson. Didn't see him at all. So they really, really struggled in the draft. And that's again, like we talk about this in segments, and sometimes I don't have the stuff to back it up. This is why, Tolly, like here's the data. Like John Gruden is picking all these guys on a whim, and they are not working out. So
then even like we've talked about the value you can get in running backs late. Like now I see Josh Kelly goes at 112 overall. He had a pretty solid rookie year for the Chargers.
Yeah, out of UCLA. Yeah, Josh Kelly. Once Eckler went down with the injury this past fall, he was one of their go-to guys. Let's see if there's any LaMichael P. Ryan for the Jets. They gave him a chance. I don't think it really worked out. The Jets' offensive line was so bad. But there's going to be some running backs on this list, like Antonio Gibson, Anthony McFarland, another running back on there. I don't know if McFarland really got a chance to play very much with the Steelers, but I saw him out there. He's a couple times, like change of pace type player. But there's definitely some guys that you can get some position. We were talking about positional value. Running back is one of them, man. Like guys have success all the time later in the draft at that position. L'Jarius Sneed, I'm glad you pointed that one out. Listed as a safety, as you can see there. So what's interesting about the La Tech guys is L'Jarius Sneed last year played safety for them. Amik Robertson, who I loved, one of the draft picks the Raiders made that I loved. He never played. I don't know why. But I loved him. I think he has a chance to be a really good pro. He's a little undersized as a corner, but he's just so tough, fearless, plays with confidence, doesn't let bad plays get him down. He's a good player. But the thing is they profile almost opposite, and it worked out that way. L'Jarius Sneed was a safety. He's playing corner in the NFL for the Chiefs. Had a nice season, nice rookie season.
He was huge for them in the playoffs.
What was he picked overall, Tolly?
138.
138. So that would have put him at 4th or 5th round pick. Yeah. And he was basically starting from day one, no?
I don't know about early. I didn't really pick up on him until they got closer to the playoffs. He started making a lot of big plays for them.
So I believe he was the day one starter at the second corner position for the Chiefs. I think he had a pick in his first game. I think they did because they were the Super Bowl champs. So they played the Thursday night game, and I think that he intercepted Deshaun Watson in that game. They played the Texans, right? That was the first game of 2020, and that was when we got all the David Johnson memes.
Yeah,
because David Johnson had like 2 touchdowns in the first half. So this has been a fun walk down memory lane. We'll go ahead and get you out. A little shorter show this week. Next week, I think my plan is to either have my top 100 for this year finished, and we can go over that, or the mock draft. I don't know which yet, but these next couple weeks leading up to the draft, guys, just so you know, it's going to be super draft heavy. I know sometimes all the details, and it can get to be a little bit much and a little bit dense for the more casual fans. So I apologize for that, but there's just simply not a whole lot else to talk about. Unless you just want to randomly talk about whatever team situation is. But we'll continue to cover the stories and get you prepared leading up to the draft. I also think it would be irresponsible, Tally, for us to talk about anything but the draft coming up. The draft has become an event. The draft rates higher than any regular season sporting event for any of the other 3 sports. It rates higher than the first and second round of the NHL and NBA playoffs.
Well, and then
it's a huge event.
Look at when they had it in Nashville, and the entire street was just packed with people.
And I think this draft's going to be one of the highest rated in years because of the quarterback intrigue. You're going to have 3 quarterbacks go in the first 3 picks. You could have 4. Although I got to tell you, I wanted Atlanta to take the QB, Tolly. Doesn't look like they're gonna.
Yeah, I don't know.
They want to trade. They want to trade back.
I actually got to tour Radio City Music Hall one of the last years that it was in New York City. And it was during the time of the draft. The first couple rounds had already happened by the time we got the tour. So I got to see their whole set in there. And then as we were leaving, there were people lined up 4 hours before rounds 4 through 7 or whatever it was going to be that day even started. And they were just amped to get inside to watch these rounds of people they don't even know who's getting picked at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge thing. I'd love to go one day. I mean, once the pandemic's over and it's all hunky dory. I mean, I really want them to do the Vegas thing with the freaking boats to the stage. That was going to be so electric, and we missed out on it. And you say what you want about Roger Goodell, man. I have my complaints with him too, but the guy is a marketing whiz, or whoever he has under him, and he does a good job of listening and delegating that stuff out. They know how to market the sport. They know how to market these events like the combine and the draft. Football's become 365, man. So
they would never do it, but they could be the ultimate trolls and be undefeated in that if they just say, you know what, we're going to host a draft in St. Louis. You can't have the team, but we'll host the draft there for you guys.
That'd be pretty mean. So you can go ahead and give us a call or text us at 904-990-FT50. Text us about a draft prospect. Text us about who you want your team to take, and we'll talk about it on the air, answer your question on the show. I bet if you've heard of him and you want your team to take him, I promise I've watched game tape of him. So call or text us at 904-990-FT50. Again, that's 904-990-FT50 or 3850. So that I think will wrap it up for the show, Nick.
Yeah.
Good sesh. We're presented by Book It Sports and Aces Wild. Be sure to download the Book It Sports app and head on over to 208 North Main Street in Columbia, Illinois, as we mentioned. But for Tolly, I'm Zach Zook, and the rest of the 50 from the 50 gang saying so long. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for making this a part of your day.